Hello you guys and welcome back to my channel. Now I know it has been forever since I did a character development video, but you guys know that I've been bogged down with work and with lively things, the madness that life is. But I am back today to do a character development video on Abraham Ford. Again, this is TV show Abraham and not comic book Abraham, because they're different. I'm gonna try and make this video slightly shorter than my other character developments because... wait for it, the catchphrase is coming. Shut up, boss. The famous "my camera is dying" line. That should literally be like the fucking slogan for my channel. My camera's gonna die. Alright, so we first see Abraham when Tara is with Glenn. Glenn collapses at the side of the road and then Tara tries to fight off kind of walkers by herself. Abraham pulls up with Rosita and Eugene in the car, in the truck, whatever you want to call it, and he takes them in. When Glenn wakes up in the back of the truck, he goes ape shit because he's trying to look for Maggie. Now he's in a stranger's car, motoring on to God knows where. So they stop the car because he almost smashes in the back fucking window. And Abraham tries to calm him down and Abraham tells him we're on a mission. Eugene has a cure for this shit, gotta get him to Washington. Glenn doesn't really give a fuck, all he cares about is Maggie. They end up getting into a physical conflict and here poor Eugene is the only one that sees the walkers coming, and Eugene tries to warn them. He's like, can you take a moment from beating each other to look at what's coming towards us? But nobody hears Eugene, so Eugene decides to take a fucking gun by himself and shoot a bunch of holes in the truck. So now they are immobile, they have no form of transportation, they gotta walk. Then we have the scene between Abraham and Tara where they're all sitting down one night and he tells Tara that he knows that she's gay because of the way she looks at Rosita. From this we get that Abraham is quite a kind of laid back guy. I mean, he's not homophobic, which is always a good thing. And he doesn't seem to be a very judgmental person. Then Glenn comes across a sign that Maggie's alive and Glenn takes off running, so the group follow him. Abraham then suggests that they stop, they take a break, and that they need to keep Eugene safe because he is a priority after all. A walker falls from the fucking sky. He falls out of some kind of half a building that was left, and Abraham and Glenn come to the kind of conclusion that they should put the right gear on Eugene because Eugene has the cure. His safety cannot be risked, so they put the right gear on Eugene. So then they come to the tunnel, the dark tunnel that Glenn wants to go through because it's quicker, but Abraham says no, it's dangerous, you don't know what's in there, so the group splits up. Tara and Glenn go in through the tunnel thing. Abraham takes Eugene and Rosita and they go around. This is where they spot Bob, Maggie and Sasha. So they actually accidentally came across Maggie before Glenn did. Abraham's group then, of course, they knew that Glenn is in the tunnel, so they go in from the other side of the tunnel and they end up saving him. So the 8 of them then continue on to Terminus. They arrive there and it seems like a pretty nice chill place. It's not like, but it seems like it. Then we next see Abraham when he's in the little kind of boxcar thing when they're taken captive at Terminus. We see them all getting ready to fight and Abraham says to Rick, you know, kind of what's the plan or what are we going to do or what are they going to find out? And Rick finds out they're going to find out that they're fucking with the wrong people. Or if you're going by the clean censored version, they're screwing with the wrong people. Now I thought that line didn't have the same impact that it should have had, but whatever. Then in season 5 we come back to where we left off. They're all still in the boxcar and we see Abraham preparing to get ready to fight and we see him telling Eugene to stay near him. So Abraham has not lost sight of his goal. He still knows he needs to get Eugene to Washington. He still needs to get Eugene to Washington. So they all fight their way out and Abraham is actually last over the fence out of Terminus. Then Abraham sees Michonne bashing a walker's head in with a fucking gun. And of course this is kind of Abraham's first glimpse into the group, what they're capable of, and I think at this point he might see them as a threat or maybe very valuable allies. I think he sees the potential in Rick's group and the protection that he could get from Rick's group and possibly the help as well. Abraham then is about to suggest to Rick that they find a vehicle, that they circle north when they hear someone screaming. This screaming person is none other than Father Gabriel perched up on a big old rock trying to avoid the walkers. Then they get to Father Gabriel's church after they save him and Abraham suggests fixing up the bus to head to DC. Then we have that lovely scene where they're all sitting down at night time in the church. Abraham gives that little speech about how everybody's survivors and then he decides to tell everybody kind of about Washington. He says we will make the dead die and let the living have this world again or something along that lines. And then he kind of looks very pointedly at Judith. So this is him saying to the group, we kind of hold the key to a safer future. You know, Eugene and everything that his little brain holds, or that we think his brain holds, could be the difference between the world deteriorating or the world improving. And then of course everybody is kind of sold on the idea. Because hello, it's a cure, who the fuck wouldn't be sold on the idea? So then we have the conflict between Rick and Abraham. Rick wants to get ready for Garrett's group. Garrett was the leader of fucking psychopath cannibals from Terminus. Rick kind of knew that they'd retaliated to come after them, so Rick wanted to plan an attack or to get ready for an attack, but Abraham wanted to go. To be fair, Abraham had a mission. In his head he had a purpose. So all of this was just setbacks to Abraham. So Abraham was like, no, look, we have to get going, we have to leave. It's not safe for Eugene to be here, which it wasn't. So Glenn then interferes at the right time because like things were getting pretty fucking heated between Rick and Abraham. And Glenn says, if you stay and you help us, me and Maggie will continue on your way to Washington and we'll help you. With Tara, of course. So Abraham agrees to this and he's like, okay, fair enough, more manpower to help protect Eugene. I'm sold, that's the plan. So then later that night, sure enough, Garrett's group do turn up, but Rick has a plan set. A few of the group had snuck out of the church, waited in the woods till Garrett's group entered the church, and then they snuck in behind them, which I was like, very sneaky, very smart. There's a reason you guys are still alive. So then Abraham helps Rick and the others to kind of beat the group to fucking death. Then the next morning then we see Abraham give Rick a map and he tells him, this is the way to Washington, this is the way that we're going. If you decide you want to catch up with us, you can come on. He wrote, sorry for being an asshole earlier, the new world is going to need Rick Grimes. He sees Rick's potential, he sees that Rick is a good man. Yeah, Rick is a bit fucked in the head, he's a bit loopy, but Rick has what it takes to survive in this world, and Abraham as a soldier sees that. He sees that Rick will be beneficial, especially once the cure, again, yeah, is handed out and the world starts going back to normal. He knows that Rick would be such a handy person to have around. Then we have the scene with Abraham in the bus. He's in the bus with Maggie, Glenn, Rosita and Tara and Eugene. The bus breaks down and it kind of bursts into flames, so they all have to get out of the bus. It crashes and then they gotta get out of the bus and fight their way to safety. They go and they haul up in a library. And then we have that strange scene where Abraham and Rosita just start making love in front of everyone. I was like, I know it's the apocalypse, guys, but could you not have built a fort out of books or something, or tore the pages apart out of a book, stuck them together and made a blanket that you could at least hide under or some shit, I don't know. But Eugene seems to find this really amusing and very entertaining, and Eugene watches on from behind a bookshelf. If that's not creepy, I don't know what is. Then we have the scene where they go out and they find a fire truck, but what they didn't know was it was blocking the door to a building that was full of walkers. So when they move the fire truck and all the walkers come out of the building, we see Abraham and the others fighting them off. But then Eugene has the smart idea to get up on top of the truck and use the hose to blast the walkers away. Abraham seems dead impressed by this, and I think this is when he starts to see that Eugene isn't completely helpless. He's not a complete imbecile that is a danger to himself. I mean, he did save their lives right there. They all get into the fire truck and they're driving along, but it breaks down again. When they get out of the fire truck, there's this weird fucking smell, and nobody can really make out what it is until they walk a bit further up the road and they see it is just a walker congregation. All the walkers decided to get together and just stumble around in giant fucking groups. Abraham wants them to power through. He doesn't want to deter from the plan or from the route that they had anymore because time is limited and it's dangerous having Eugene out in the open. So Abraham says that we have to keep going, we have to power through. But then everybody gets into a fight at the fire truck. Glenn is saying we shouldn't go through, we'll find a way around. Abraham's saying we don't have time. Everyone starts screaming and fighting. Then, in an attempt to defuse the situation, Eugene decides now is a fantastic time to announce to everyone, hey guys, not actually a scientist, don't have the cure. This trip is for absolutely nothing. The only reason he'd said that he had a cure was in order to survive, in order to have a group around him that would protect him at all costs. Which was a very smart plan, and you gotta commend Eugene's determination for self-preservation. You gotta commend him on that. Abraham at this point feels like he's had the rug snatched out from underneath him. Abraham had been pinning all of his hopes and dreams and his drive on the fact that Eugene had a cure and they had to get him to Washington. So Abraham now feels like everything was for nothing, which it was. So he punches Eugene, knocks him out, and this is where he drops to his knees, defeated. Then, it's during this episode that we see a little bit of flashback for Abraham. We see a scene in a supermarket where we see Abraham going batshit crazy on a group of people that had presumably attacked his family. In this flashback, Abraham has a wife and 2 kids. We see him beating up someone and then we see him going back to behind like a counter where his family are, and they all look absolutely terrified of him. Now Abraham in his head was doing the right thing by protecting his family, but he did look borderline psychotic and scary, and he frightened his family. When he gets up the next morning, they left. They left a note saying, like, don't come find us, we're fine. So naturally he goes out looking for them, only to discover that they have been eaten and killed not too far away. So Abraham, back at this stage, was pretty much new to the apocalypse, been trying to survive, trying to keep his family safe, but in doing so had scared them away and had indirectly caused their death. So he pulls out a gun, he's about to kill himself when Eugene comes running along begging for help, and then Eugene tells him about having the cure. So straight away, Abraham has a mission again. Abraham strikes me as the type of person, I think maybe because he was a soldier, that he needs something to drive him. He needs a mission. He needs a clear, set plan in order to keep him going. So even though he had lost hope and lost faith and had lost the will to live for a few minutes there, I think the arrival of Eugene gave him something to live for, gave him hope for the future. To be honest, I think Abraham clinged to Eugene every bit as much as Eugene clinged to him for survival. Then we have some more shut down Abraham scenes, God help us. Rosita tries to offer him water and he's kind of like, no. He gets a bit aggressive, so Maggie pulls a gun and then he drops to his knees again. Maggie then does what I think was a very smart move, and she tells him to get over himself. You know, it's the apocalypse, you can't go into shutdown mode. Just because one thing went wrong, you need to keep going. You need to make your own route and your own destination, and you need to get up off the fucking floor, Abraham. So when Maggie had went to shoot him and she threatened him, he had sunk to the floor again. Later on, Maggie says to him, like, I thought that, you know, you wanted me to shoot you or whatever. And then Abraham admits, I thought I did, but I didn't. So in that moment, it was like he was taken back to when his family had died. Again, he had felt absolutely lost and so devastated that he wanted to die in that moment, but he had snapped back out of it. And then when Eugene wakes up and Maggie runs over to him to help him and try and... I don't even know. Make sure he doesn't get sunburnt or something. That's when Abraham finally picks up the water bottle, and picking up the water bottle is like a little symbol that Abraham is back in the game. He hasn't given up. So then they all get back in the fire truck and they arrive just in time to save Michonne, Coral, Father Gabriel and Judith from the walkers that are attacking the church. They arrive up in their big shiny fire truck, and here they find out that Beth is still alive. Maggie didn't know Beth was still alive. Abraham's like, who the fuck is Beth? What? But now I guess that Abraham has no real set destination. I think he just is going with the flow. He's like, alright, fuck it, like, I'll go with them. I have nothing else to be doing, really. Washington is now off the cards. Then we have the scene where they're all helping each other push the walkers off the cliff because they have no energy. And when you got no energy, what do? You just shove the walkers off the cliff. Then we have the scene, the first kind of real interaction that we have between Sasha and Abraham. Sasha had gone into shutdown mode, and we see her try and attack the walkers even though everyone had agreed to just push them off the cliff to try and preserve their energy. Abraham kind of says to Sasha, like, whoa, you're ruining the plan. And we see a little bit of Abraham's character really shine through when they find the bottles of water. Aaron from Alexandria had been there and left out water and supplies for them, but of course the group didn't know Aaron at this time. They didn't know what was going on. So they were very cautious about trying the water in case it was poisoned or it was tainted in some way. Eugene picks it up, and Eugene kind of has the attitude with, well, I've been a dick, I might as well help you guys and see it's poisoned. But as he's about to drink it, Abraham slaps it out of his hand. Now at this stage, Abraham knows Eugene doesn't have the cure. Abraham saved his life even though he didn't need to. Now it might have been out of habit of keeping Abraham alive, of keeping Eugene alive for so long, but Abraham still felt kind of a duty towards him. Abraham then goes with Rosita the following morning. After Aaron has been introduced to the group, they decide that we need to check his story out. So Abraham goes with Rosita to check out the kind of caravan, and they do see that there is food there. These people seem to be legit, he seems to be telling the truth. Then we see Abraham have a moment with Rosita where he asks her, did you think I was going to hurt her? The moment where Maggie threatened him with the gun, I think Maggie stepped in because she believed that Abraham could be capable of hurting Rosita. And he asked Rosita, like, did you think I was going to hurt you? And Rosita said no. I think Abraham was afraid that he could have potentially scared Rosita away in the same way that he'd scared his family away. But thank God she said no, like, you didn't scare me, or I didn't think you were going to hurt me, even though she probably was lying. Then they all get into the motorhome and they decide to drive to Alexandria, and they pass through Washington. And it's like a bittersweet moment where you have Abraham looking around at Rosita, and they're kind of like, this was our destination, this was where we were supposed to be going. But now our whole plan and our whole outlook has changed. We don't need to go there anymore. And it was such a weird moment for them. We have the famous "Who's Deanna" quote when they get into Alexandria. And Deanna decides to give Abraham the job of kind of building up the walls. She wanted him to build up the walls of the town to keep it safe and keep it fortified. We later then see Abraham go to Deanna's party with Rosita. They both look awkward as fuck, let me just be the first to say. They're standing there like, But they're now in the civilized world where like parties and drinks and socializing is a thing again. They're so used to like being dirty and fighting for survival and constantly reaching for like their knives and their weapons that being in this calm social situation is just so alien. But then Abraham finds out there's beers there, so he relaxes a bit and goes off to get a beer for himself. And then we have that scene where he talks to Michonne, and they kind of talk about how weird it is to be in this situation. And Michonne pretty much tells him that she'll always have her sword, that she'll always have her katana, that it won't leave her. So Michonne is saying, I know it's weird, yeah, but what we went through will never leave us. We'll never get over it or forget it. Then we see him get up after a night with Rosita and head off to work like a normal human being, which is strange in The Walking Dead. He goes off anyway to start ripping apart like I think it's like a mall to get supplies to build up the wall of Alexandria when a walker herd pretty much attacks. A woman anyway is knocked from where she is. I think she's up on like a truck or something, but she's knocked over. Tobin pretty much says leave her behind, we gotta go. But Abraham won't. Abraham still has that soldier protect. They're my people, they're my group, I can't leave them behind. So he goes back in and saves her life. Then Abraham kind of scolds them for not having anyone on watch. I mean, in this new world you have to have people constantly on lookout. And the Alexandrians didn't seem to be aware of this fact. And they seemed pretty much shocked that the walkers had attacked. And as soon as the walkers attacked, their mentality was like, fuck it, let's leave everyone that's here, we gotta save ourselves. So Abraham pretty much gave out to them for that and then said we need to have people on watch at all times. And Abraham kind of takes over the operation. After Rick goes a little bit loopy and there's like a town meeting called, you see Abraham with Carol and Glenn kind of talking about what they're going to do. And then we have that lovely scene where he sits down and he's talking to Eugene. Rosita knocks over something, I think it's like a plate or a pot or something. She knocks over something on purpose to wake Eugene up so the two men can talk. And it's during the scene that they admit to each other that they both needed each other, that they both relied on each other for whatever reason, and that the reason that they were both here alive together was because of each other. So the situation that happened with Eugene wasn't all that bad. Then we see Abraham vouch for Rick at this meeting, and that he says that Rick is the reason that they all survived, and that if anybody deserves to stay in Alexandria, that it would be Rick. Abraham sees the kind of raw animalistic survivor in Rick, and he knows himself that Rick doesn't deserve to be thrown out like to the fucking walkers. The Alexandrians are very simple-minded, they're very innocent, and Abraham's trying to get across to them that that's just what the world is now. You have to be almost ruthless in order to survive. But then Pete comes in to the meeting, he gate crashed the fucking meeting, killed Reg, and then Abraham had to tackle him to the floor, and everybody was like waiting to see what was going on. They were like, what now? I mean, they were just trying to decide whether Rick should stay there or not. And Abraham's kind of saying, well, the world is different now. And then Pete comes in and accidentally kills Reg. Rick waits for Deanna to give the go-ahead, and when she does, Rick kills Reg. Pete. Rick kills Pete. There's too many names in this. In season 6, we see Abraham burying Reg. We see him kind of looking at the wedding ring on his finger, and he pours a bit of whiskey over the hand, like kind of like having a last drink. Then we have that very strange scene where he's sitting on the porch of the house. He kept Reg's wedding ring, and he was kind of playing with it, trying to balance it on a bottle. Sasha walks by and is like, you okay? And Abraham just gives her the peace sign, or that's backwards, peace sign, and she kind of does it back and moves on. Then we see Abraham and Sasha agree to lead the walker herd away from Alexandria. Again, Abraham is stepping back into his kind of soldier boots, kind of let's protect people. And then we have that lovely scene with him and Sasha afterwards where he says to her, like, do you want to die? And she admits no. And I think this is the first real hint that something could happen between the two of them, because they understand each other on such a fundamental level. They're both very kind of guarded, shut off people. They've both lost people they loved. They both need something in life to keep them going. They both need something to guide them. And I think this is where they kind of realised, hang on, we're kind of alike. So then when he's in the car with Sasha and they're luring the walker herd away, a few of the walkers go astray, they go off into the forest. The walkers are like, fuck this, I'm sick of following this stupid car, I'm off. Abraham decides to jump out of the moving car and get the walkers' attention to drag them all back onto the road, back to following the car. Abraham had just jumped out of the car recklessly in front of like 100 fucking walkers and hadn't even thought twice about it. This kind of makes you question Abraham's mental state. Is he losing it a little bit? Does he want to live? Does he care about living? Abraham's excuse was it was fun. Of course, the horn from Alexandria starts fucking wailing in the distance and they know something's gone wrong. Daryl's on his bike beside the car that has Sasha and Abraham. Daryl fucks off away out of it and Sasha and Abraham are kind of calling after him to come back, Rick, anyway, eventually tells Daryl to go back to Abraham and Sasha. After they manage to get the walker herd 20 miles away from Alexandria, somebody starts shooting at them. It's during the scene that Daryl gets separated from Abraham and Sasha. When they eventually crash their car, they start fighting back, but Sasha tells them that they pretty much need to leave. They're in like a nearby town when Abraham notices a zombie. There's also a door nearby with Dixon on it, so they go through this door, they go upstairs, and it's kind of like a safe area. They decide to stay there. While they're there, there's a walker kind of trapped behind a door or pane of glass, and Abraham goes to kill it, and Sasha kind of tells him you don't have to, and she tries to confront him about his very vicious, his violent personality and behaviour. And then Abraham then is kind of like, hi Posh, this is the kettle. I distinctly remember you cutting my arm after the Bob Tyrese fucking thing. And then Sasha then kind of realises how alike they both are and how much they have in common. Abraham goes off around town the next morning. He finds a rocket-filled case, because what else would you find on the streets of a town? Then we have that very tense scene where he's trying to get the rocket launcher. There's like a zombie, or sorry, a walker, hanging off one of the cars, and he has the rocket launcher draped across him. Now what good is a rocket without a rocket launcher? So Abraham goes out of his way to get this rocket launcher. Nearly gets bit, gives the fuck up, goes away, and is like, so angry with life. And then the zombie falls from where he was hanging, and then the rocket launcher is left dangling. He gets the rocket launcher and the rockets, brings them all back to Sasha, and he's like, look what I found on my outing. And it's during the scene where Abraham tells Sasha that he'd like them to get to know each other better. Now at this stage he was still with Rosita, so I was like, bitch, what are you doing? But Abraham saw something in Sasha that he needed. And I think it's at this stage of the show that he kind of started looking for something to live for again. Then we have the awesome action-packed scene where Abraham, Sasha and Daryl are all in the truck or the car together, and they come across Negan's gang on the road. And the leader of this fella tells them how everything now belongs to Negan. I think this is one of the first mentions of Negan in the show. Daryl then takes a few of the men to the back of the truck to show them what they have. He doesn't do that. Daryl kills them all, comes out of nowhere with a rocket launcher and blows up the rest of them. So the rocket launcher that Abraham had gone through all the trouble to get, that we saw earlier, actually was the weapon that saved their lives. If Daryl hadn't had that rocket launcher, he wouldn't have been able to blow up all of the saviours on the road, and they probably would have been taken captive at that point. When they get back to Alexandria, Abraham and Sasha are the two to save Glenn. Glenn is cornered against a wall by the walkers. Maggie is screaming his name. Abraham and Sasha save his life. We then see in the next episode, we see Sasha tell Abraham that she has swapped shifts with Eugene, and we see Abraham look kind of sad by this, and he looks kind of pissed off, like he was looking forward to spending time with her. So this is showing that Abraham is growing quite close to Sasha, and he's developing an attachment to her. But she flashes him the peace sign, which is reflecting on the earlier episode where he did that to her. Even though it was out of nowhere, it was kind of strange, kind of random. That was her kind of saying, like, we're still good. Then we have the scene where Abraham's in bed with Rosita. She gives him like a necklace that she made for him, and I think this was kind of more Abraham trying to convince himself that things could work with Rosita. I have something in my eyeball. I had known that he'd been with Rosita for so long, and that he wanted to make things work with her. He wanted it to be right with her because they had been together so long, and I think they were still together out of habit more than love. Then we see a few of the group go to Hilltop, and Abraham was one of them. On the way to Hilltop, we see Abraham asking Glenn subtly, or what he thinks is subtly, if he had planned on having a baby with Maggie. The best quick conversation. Glenn then says that they were planning it, and he's kind of confused as to why Abraham would care. When they're inside Gregory's house, we see Abraham ask Daryl how long did he think that Michonne and Rick had been together. Michonne, I said it accidentally. Michonne and Rick had been together. So this is kind of Abraham taking an interest in other people's relationships, in other people's kind of love lives, all of a sudden, when there would have been time where he wouldn't have given a shit. I think that shows that Abraham is starting to question his decisions. He's starting to question what the future could hold. Now that they have Alexandria, now that they could possibly do trade with Hilltop, I think he's starting to try to get relationship advice off of people, even though he doesn't directly want to ask for it. So then there's this, when all the fight goes down in the courtyard, there's this fella that tries to attack Rick. Abraham tackles him and fights him instead, and when this guy gets up on top of Abraham and starts choking him, Abraham almost gives up. He just kind of lies there. But as he's lying, and as the life is being kind of shaken from his body, it's almost like he hears Sasha in his head. So that was like the one last final time he decided to leave his life up to the fates. I mean, you had the time when he jumped out of the car, you had the time when he went walking around the town when he found the rocket launcher by himself, and then you had this time where he literally just lays there and lets, fate decide what happens to him. Now Daryl does come along and snap your man's arm and save Abraham, but I think this was Abraham's way of deciding. Once that happened, I think his mind was made up. There's a really interesting symbolism in this scene, because when he gets up off the floor, when Darrell helps him up after being in the fight with your man, the necklace that Rosita had made him had fallen off and was on the floor. So this was kind of symbolising that he was leaving Rosita behind, that he'd made the decision to go be with Sasha, especially because he heard Sasha's voice in his head. It wasn't Rosita's that he heard, it was Sasha. Okay, you guys, we've had a day change. Basically, the camera died. I didn't want to, when I was recording the first part of the video, it was really late. I didn't want to wait up until the middle of the night to fucking film. It's now a different day, but we're back into it. Alright, where was I? Oh yeah, the sonogram. So we see Abraham looking at Maggie's sonogram, the sonogram of her baby, and we see him kind of smile at it as he passes it around. This, I think, is kind of hinting at the fact that he sees the future, that he sees kids in his future. The kids wouldn't be a painful topic for him anymore. I mean, given the fact that he lost kids at the very beginning of the apocalypse, he lost his wife and his kids. The topic of children or family would have been very tender for him. It wouldn't have been something that he would have looked on fondly, but at this point of the show now, it's like he's overcome that, he's overcome his past, and he's looking forward to the future and to the beautiful things that can be found in this horrible world. Then he gets back to Alexandria and he goes to Rosita and he starts packing his bags to fucking leave. He just starts packing his shit into a bag. Poor Rosita's like, what's going on? Why are you leaving? So then Rosita understandably demands an explanation. She kind of asks him, what's going on? What are you doing? And then he screams out, why are dingleberries brown or blue? I can't remember the colour, but he asks a very strange, very Abraham question. And then he tells her that he's leaving her. And the last thing he says to her before he leaves is, I thought you were the last woman on earth, you're not. I thought that was one of the most horrible things that he could have said, and I was so fucking pissed at him when he said it. Now I understand what he was trying to say. He was trying to say, like, we came together because of practicality, because we were just there, it just happened. But I think now that Abraham has felt the spark or the connection that he feels for Sasha, he realises that he doesn't really feel that towards Rosita. Like I said, he was only with her out of practicality. He was only with her because she was the only woman near him. So now that he's actually caught feelings for Sasha, or, you know, apparently he's caught feelings for her. I make it sound like a fucking, like a flu or a cold. He caught the feelings. I think he wants to feel something for the person that he's with, which is why he's letting Rosita go. But he phrased it so horribly. Then we have the scene between Eugene and Abraham. Eugene brings Abraham into this place where he tells him about how he's going to start making bullets, about how to create the bullets. And I was genuinely impressed at Eugene at this stage. He put his brains to good use. I mean, obviously they can only use what they find in the apocalypse, and ammo isn't easy to come by. So by Eugene coming up with a way to make ammo, to make bullets, it's kind of setting them up for the future. Then we have the scene where that walker comes out with the melted shit all over his face. He's like metal that was once like liquidy, but it had poured over him and solidified, so he had a bitchin' metal looking helmet that just would not come off. Eugene tells Abraham, like, I got this, I can handle it, let me do it. But Eugene can't, and Abraham has to interfere. When Abraham interferes, Eugene gets kind of angry at him. He tells him I had it, I could have handled it. Then the two lads get into a fight, and Eugene tells Abraham, your services are no longer required. I think this is one of the worst things that you could have told Abraham, because Abraham has the kind of soldier mentality, because he had been the one leading and protecting Eugene all along. To hear Eugene turn around to him and go, I don't need you anymore. I think that was very hard for Abraham to swallow, and I don't think he ever expected to hear that from Eugene. There's a kind of comfort in knowing that somebody needs you or relies on you, and I think when he learned that Eugene didn't need that anymore, I don't think he was ready to hear that. So Abraham then gets kind of bitchy and he tells him to find his own way home. Now as Eugene makes his way home, he gets picked up by Dwight and the Saviours, and they all come to meet again on the train tracks. We see them have a little bit of a showdown. They shoot and kill Denise. God help us, I feel so bad for caught in the crossfire. And then they bring Eugene out of the bushes, kneel him down, and it's like, fuck, they've gotten Eugene. You had one job, Eugene, make your way home. Then we see Abraham lurking in the background. Eugene tells Dwight this. He tells him, you know, he's over there, he's in the bushes, why don't you go get him first? And at this point I was like, really, Eugene? One fight and you sell out your fucking one of your best friends? But Eugene had a plan. His quick thinking brain kicked into action, and when Dwight was distracted and turned to look at Abraham, Eugene locked onto his nether regions, took a good bite for himself, and then all the fucking shit escalated again. Eugene was shot and harmed in the process of this scene, but he lived, it didn't kill him. Then we have the scene where they get back to Alexandria and Abraham is sitting down with Eugene and he tells him, you know, you really know how to bite a dick, I appreciate that. And we see the two men kind of laugh it off, and it's like the matter is settled. It's like the fight they had before the Dwight situation it is just kind of dissolved and evaporated because the two men came so close to dying on the train tracks. I think they realised that arguing over stupid shit and being petty in this world, it's just not worth it because you don't know how long you have with someone. So the two lads put their pride aside and they're back to being buddies. And I think at this stage as well, Abraham welcomed the fact that Eugene wasn't completely helpless. I mean, the quick thinking on the train tracks is what saved them all on Eugene's behalf. So I think Abraham in this instance just accepted it. He accepted the fact that Eugene had his strong points and that he was capable. And it's after this then that we see Abraham be invited into Sasha's house. This moment for me was just like, oh, okay, so he's really going with Sasha then. Poor Rosita, I feel so bad for her. Then we see him in the RV or the fucking caravan, whatever you want to call it. He's driving the vehicle to Hilltop because Maggie is sick. She's dying down the back of the caravan, so Abraham drives the RV with everyone on it on the way to Hilltop. This is where they meet all the saviours on the road, all the roadblocks. They keep going around them, finding new ways around. And we have that scene between Abraham and Sasha where he asks her, does she think that they could have what Glenn and Maggie have? And you see them kind of looking at each other, and there's that beautiful shot of the sunlight trickling in behind Abraham because he's in the driver's seat, and the camera shot is, it's as if you're sitting where Sasha is. So when you look at Abraham, you can see the light coming in behind him. He looks happy, he looks content. It looks for a minute just like a fucking family road trip in that one scene. I mean, when you take away the fact that Maggie's dying and they have people on the road trying to kill them, when you take away all of that, that scene was lovely. I think that scene as well just showed that Abraham was closing the last chapter in his life and he was opening a new one. That now that he was with Sasha, it was like, yeah, he's a new girlfriend, is great, but he actually wants to build and mould a life with her, the way Glenn and Maggie are doing. Then Eugene comes up with the brainwave that yes, the saviours are everywhere and they seem to know where they're going to be, but the saviours are looking for the RV, they're not looking for the people. So in other words, Eugene just pointed out that if somebody was to take the RV, it would distract the saviours while the rest of the group try and sneak away through the forest. So we see Eugene giving Rick the plans to make the bullets, which is never good. I mean, Eugene, the fact that you're handing those plans over just suggests that you think you're going to die, and if you think you're going to die, that makes me feel uneasy. So he gives the plans to Rick, and then he has that moment with Abraham where they hug each other and where Abraham does tell him, you are a survivor. All along, Eugene had been saying this to Abraham, like, I'm a survivor, like, I have this, and Abraham had always kind of shrugged it off and gone, alright, Eugene. But at this stage, Abraham sees that Eugene has stepped up to the plate, that he has come such a long distance from the man that he used to be, that he doesn't need to be sheltered, he doesn't need to be protected anymore. And this scene, in a way, it kind of reminded me of like a mother letting their child like fly the coop, letting their child off into the world. Because I think this is one of the first times Eugene, actually I think it is the first time ever, that Eugene has gone and done a mission by himself. Not with Abraham, not with Rosita, not with people to mind him, he was going alone. He got into the RV and drove off by himself, knowing very well that it was dangerous, knowing very well that he was leaving all of his friends behind with no contact between them. But he took that chance to try and save Maggie in the group. But anyway, that didn't work out because then they all get cornered by the whistling saviours that are all... Yeah, I can't whistle. And then the last that we see Abraham is he's in Negan's lineup. He's standing the tallest out of everyone. Poor Eugene's brought out of the bushes as well, so they found and intercepted Eugene, and he's part of the lineup too. I think based off of all of Abraham's character development that I don't see him surviving the Lucille death. And I hate saying that because I love his character, but I don't see it happening. Especially because he's... When you see him in the lineup, he's standing up the tallest. Like, Daryl's slumped over because he's hurt. Rick is slumped over because the Crater's defeated and his head is wrecked. Eugene's slumped over because he's scared. Maggie's slumped over because she's sick. But Abraham is sitting the tallest out of everyone. There's that soldier instinct kicking in and taking it like a champ. It would be something I could see somebody saying to Abraham. Abraham would be the one person that I would completely believe would, every time you hit him, he'd get back up. So... Poor Abe. But Abraham went from a man that was driven completely by missions, that was driven completely by goals and by what he had to do, a man that ran away from his past and tried to avoid it, to a man that was going after what he wanted, that he pursued Sasha, that he got himself out of a relationship that he wasn't happy in, and that he was planning on building a life with Sasha. So I think we've seen a lot of development for Abraham. And relationship-wise, obviously the relationship he had with Rick was very important because Rick was the leader. Abraham kind of fell into step behind Rick. But the two men really grew to appreciate each other and respect each other. The relationship he had with Rosita was very important because they just kind of coexisted for a while. Yeah, the relationship obviously was important to him at one stage, and it did keep him going for a very long time. But I think that relationship showed him what he didn't want as well. Because then when he got with Sasha, or when he kind of started talking to Sasha properly, he saw exactly what he did want and what he did need, and that just showed him how the relationship that he currently had with Rosita wasn't good for him. The relationship he had with Eugene was probably the most important. It was a very familiar bond, like a family bond or like a brotherly bond. And the two lads have been through an awful lot together. They started off as like, Abraham was just like, you're like an inconvenience, I gotta keep you safe, gotta get you here. They went from that to Abraham just helping keep Eugene alive just because. I mean, he knew he didn't have the cure, but he still kept him alive. He went from that to respecting him. That last scene that we saw the two lads interact together where Eugene was getting on the RV, we saw true, genuine emotion in Abraham's eyes. That he was stunned that his best friend was gonna risk his life to try and, you know, lure the Saviours away. And there was also the relationship he had with his family as well. The family that died in one of the flashbacks that we saw. Because I think that affected a lot on how Abraham looked at the world, on how he looked on the future. I think that will haunt him for as long as he's on the show, for as long as he's alive, the fact that he lost his family. But I think it's going to help him along the way as well, because like we saw in that scene where he asks Rosita if she thought he was capable of like hurting her or attacking her. It was like the fear of what happened to his family could happen to somebody in his life now, that he could frighten them away. So that's all for Abraham. I hope you guys enjoyed. It was a super long video. I had to film it over 2 fucking days. But I really do hope you all enjoyed. And yeah, I don't know if you can see, but I got a new bookcase in the background. I'll probably show that to you guys in another video. So I hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you all soon.